We grow up believing that control equals safety, that if we can just control how our day unfolds, how others behave, how our plans go, then we'll finally feel calm, secure, and on track. But what if the very act of trying to control every outcome is exactly what's blocking the outcomes you want most? Think about it. How often do you catch yourself forcing things? Forcing your productivity even when your body's exhausted. Forcing a relationship that clearly doesn't flow anymore. Forcing a version of success that deep down you're not even sure you want. We cling, we grip, and we micromanage, and yet nothing clicks into place. Life starts feeling like a job interview you can't quite pass, but something powerful begins to shift the moment you stop trying to force life to obey your timeline. When you stop grasping so tightly, life finally has room to breathe. And when it breathes, it moves. It moves people into your life. It moves obstacles out. It moves clarity right in front of you, even if you didn't plan for it. You see, there's a strange but beautiful intelligence at play in the background. Call it God, the universe, life, source, whatever language works for you. It's always responding to your energy, not your control. And when your energy says, I trust, life starts responding with experiences that prove that trust wasn't foolish, it was the key. So here's a deeper truth no one really teaches us. Control is a form of fear. But trust? Trust is freedom. And freedom is the frequency where things finally begin to align. The moment you loosen your grip, you start to notice how much of your life you've been holding hostage with expectations. You were trying to control how fast your healing should go. You were trying to predict when love should enter. You were micromanaging your future, thinking you needed every step perfectly planned. And yet, all that control was never peace. It was pressure disguised as productivity. Let me ask you this. Have you ever finally given up on something, really surrendered, and then out of nowhere, something better arrived? That job you thought you had to chase, the person you kept trying to fix, the version of success you were forcing because you thought it made you worthy. The moment you let go, it's like life sighed in relief and said, now I can finally show you what I had in store all along. Here's what most people miss. Control limits your vision. It narrows your focus down to only what you think is possible. But when you let go of controlling how and when, you open the door to outcomes you never imagined. You become available to surprises, and surprises are often the most aligned parts of our journey. Letting go isn't giving up. It's saying, I've done my part. Now I'm allowing life to do its part. You don't sit back passively. You move with clarity, not control. You trust that what's meant for you is already finding its way. And your job is to stay open enough to let it in, without strangling it with expectations. And strangely, once you operate from this place, once you trust that things are working even when you don't see the evidence, you gain a new kind of power. A calm, grounded confidence. Not the kind that comes from having everything figured out, but the kind that comes from knowing you don't need to. You know what's wild? The universe isn't waiting for your timeline. It's not scrolling through your to-do list or checking your 5-year plan. It's responding to your state, not your schedule. And that's why the less you try to force things into place, the more they seem to fall into place on their own. Let's be honest. Most of us don't really want control. We want certainty. We want the comfort of knowing how things will play out, who will stay, what the outcome will be. But control is the illusion we chase to avoid the discomfort of uncertainty. And here's the paradox. The more you chase certainty, the more unstable you feel. Think about how often control actually backfires. You overthink a text, and it comes off cold. You micromanage a project, and your creativity dries up. You obsess over results, and you miss the quiet signs of progress already happening around you. But when you loosen the grip, when you give life a little breathing room, your energy shifts. You become more magnetic. People feel safer around you. Ideas come more naturally. Even time seems to stretch in your favor. Why? Because you're no longer in a constant state of resistance. The less you control, the more you observe. And when you're in observer mode, you catch things you couldn't see before. You start noticing opportunities that were always there, but hidden beneath your anxiety. You hear the words behind people's silence. You see the next step appear, not because you planned it, but because you allowed space for it to reveal itself. This is not about being passive. It's about being precise with your energy. You no longer waste it on forcing things. You protect your peace, you preserve your curiosity, and most importantly, you let life meet you halfway, instead of dragging everything to the finish line alone. Here's something no one tells you. When you stop over-managing life, you start partnering with it. We're conditioned to believe that if we don't have a grip on everything, it will fall apart. That if we aren't constantly adjusting, worrying, planning, controlling, we'll lose the chance, the person, the dream. But here's what actually happens when you release that grip. The world doesn't fall apart. You just stop being the one holding all the pieces. You begin to operate from trust, not tension. And that shift is everything. Because control is rooted in fear. It's a survival instinct dressed up as productivity. But trust? Trust is rooted in presence and awareness, in a quiet confidence that even if you don't have all the answers right now, life has a rhythm, and it's smarter than your strategy. When you control less, you become more open. Open to the idea that your plan may not be the only path. Open to the moments that feel off track, but are actually redirecting you. Open to people who surprise you, conversations that shift your thinking, chances you wouldn't have dared to take if you stayed in the illusion of control. And that openness, that's the access point to flow. It's the reason some people seem lucky while others feel stuck. It's not luck, it's surrender. It's the decision to move from force to alignment, to stop pushing and start allowing. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally wise enough to know that life moves better when you don't stand in its way. There's a strange kind of strength in letting go. Not the reckless kind that throws hands in the air and gives up, but the kind that trusts so deeply it no longer needs to cling. The kind that whispers, "I don't need to know how this ends to keep walking." We often assume control is the price of success, that the more we tighten the bolts and micromanage the process, the closer we'll get to what we want. But reality works on its own terms. The more you try to dominate it, the more it resists. Just like holding water too tightly in your fist, it slips through. Let it rest on your open palm, and it stays. This is what happens in relationships, in careers, in creativity. The need to control pushes things away. It suffocates growth. When you need someone to act a certain way, when you need your project to unfold exactly as imagined, when you grip every timeline and outcome, you're telling life, "I don't trust you." And that energy, people feel it. The universe feels it, and it responds in kind. But when you ease up, when you release your white-knuckle grip on how things should go, things start to move. People feel safe around you. Ideas come easier. Momentum builds. And ironically, what you wanted from control starts showing up. Not because you forced it, but because you made room for it. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means growing up. It's maturity that says, "I'll do my part, and I'll allow space for life to do its part too." It's that paradox. The less you control, the more happens for you. Not instantly, not always how you pictured, but often in a way that's better than you imagined. Because it's not just coming from your mind, it's coming through alignment. And that's where real transformation begins. Let's get real about why this works, because it's not some fluffy self-help idea. It's psychology, energy, and behavior. The need to control often stems from fear. Fear of losing something. Fear of not being enough. Fear that if we don't grip tight, things will fall apart. But ironically, this fear becomes the very thing that blocks progress. When you're desperate to control every outcome, you're no longer creating, you're surviving. You're operating from a state of tension, of reactivity, and people can feel that, even if they don't know how to name it. It shows up in the way you speak, the way you move, the way you make decisions. It becomes resistance energy, and resistance repels. But when you operate from trust, when your actions come from a place of grounded self-assurance rather than frantic control, you create magnetism. You become someone who others want to follow, collaborate with, or simply be around. You become someone who radiates calm authority instead of chaos. You start to notice that the world opens up to you in small ways. People respond better. You find flow in your work. Unexpected opportunities start showing up. Why? Because the frantic grasping is gone. you've stepped into presence. There's a reason athletes talk about being in the zone. It's not about effort. It's about focus without force. It's about surrendering to the moment, not overthinking, not micromanaging every move. And that's when they perform at their best. You don't need to control every outcome to move forward. You need to focus on your input and let go of the attachment to the result. Let your work speak. Let your energy speak. Let your presence do the heavy lifting. The moment you stop overmanaging life and start participating in it fully, without attachment, everything begins to align. The pressure softens, but the results become more powerful. Not because you forced them, but because you allowed them. Now here's something most people don't realize. Control often disguises itself as responsibility. It's easy to convince yourself that micromanaging every detail means you're being committed, driven, or ambitious. But in truth, that kind of control can quickly turn into a trap. Because instead of moving forward with clarity, you're just spinning your wheels, exhausting yourself with every possible what if. Here's where things get powerful. When you stop forcing life into your timeline, you start aligning with its rhythm. And the rhythm of life doesn't care about your calendar or your constant planning. It rewards presence, clarity, and trust. That's when things start showing up faster than you ever imagined, but only once you get out of your own way. Think about it like this. If you're trying to grow a plant, you don't keep digging it up every day to check if it's growing. You water it, give it sunlight, and trust the process. But when it comes to our goals, relationships, or self-worth, we're constantly digging up the plant, overanalyzing, second-guessing, over-planning, because we're afraid it won't work unless we stay on top of every single detail. But the truth is, life doesn't thrive under constant surveillance. It thrives in trust. And when you start trusting more, you start seeing the real difference between controlling and creating. Controlling is rooted in fear. Creating is rooted in alignment. One drains your energy. The other builds momentum. This shift in mindset doesn't mean you stop putting in the effort. It means you stop strangling the outcome. You let your actions come from a place of confidence rather than fear. And that small shift, it changes how people respond to you. It changes how opportunities show up. It changes how you feel inside. Lighter, sharper, more magnetic. Because the moment you stop needing to control everything, you realize something profound. You never needed to. The world doesn't respond to your grip. It responds to your energy. And the most powerful energy you can offer? Calm, certain, aligned presence. Here's the irony. The moment you finally let go is usually the moment it all starts coming together. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped gripping so tightly. You stopped clenching your fist around outcomes and instead opened yourself up to receive. That's when synchronicities begin. That's when people notice a different energy in you. One that doesn't scream desperation or control, but quiet confidence and clarity. The shift is subtle, but the results are massive. You speak with more intention. You act with more ease. You stop needing constant reassurance because you found a deeper trust. Not just in life, but in yourself. And when that trust takes root, you don't chase. You attract. Not by doing less, but by finally doing things from a place of peace instead of pressure. This isn't about giving up. It's about giving in to the flow, to the bigger picture, to the idea that things are always moving, even when you don't see them. The less you control, the more you notice just how much is working for you behind the scenes. Now, if this message hit something in you, if it made you reflect even just a bit, drop the word flow in the comments. Let's see how many of us are done forcing and ready to start trusting. And if you're part of that shift, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and stay locked in for the next one. You're not alone on this path. Let's keep walking it together.